Hello viewers, in Gran Turismo 7 we finally have the return of Grand Valley in the form of Highway 1. If we take a look at the track map and turn it sideways, the layout might look familiar to you. If we overlay the Grand Valley Speedway from previous games, you can see that the layout is very similar, although not exactly the same. And so with a slightly different name and a very similar layout, is this the same track? Is this Grand Valley Speedway or is it not Grand Valley Speedway? Well, yes and no, it kind of is and it isn't. The layout is very similar, but as you can see, the scenery is a complete change. Polyphony have obviously given this track a massive overhaul and changed the scenery to reflect that of California's State Route 1, which gives the track its name, Highway 1. Now, I was kind of curious about this. I would like to know your thoughts on whether or not you think this is a positive or a negative change. Originally, I would have liked to see Grand Valley Speedway return in its original form. I was willing to give this version a good go. And this version, this is the longer track, the 5 km Highway 1. We will look at the shorter track later in this video. But we've gone through the first two sectors. This is where the Big Blue Bridge would have been in the Speedway version, and this has obviously been a bit been adapted. And then this last sector, I'd say, is very different compared to Speedway. With this very tight hairpin through this tunnel, which leads out into a very tight chicane. This left-right chicane, quite awkward to get right. And then this bit here is based on the Bixby Bridge in California, just slightly south of San Jose. So it's kind of a weird amalgamation of a fictional circuit, but in a real-life location with some of the roads being actually real. But that is a lap of the track. I'm going to bring it across the line in, what is the lap time going to be? A 1:48.1. Good enough for gold, but let's jump into a race and see how this track performs with other cars on the circuit. Now, I decided to load up a lobby, and a fair amount of you guys joined and jumped in, and let's give it a good go. I've jumped into a Group 3 race. I've got the Chevrolet Corvette up in towards the first corner, big braking zone. Try to keep the car on the inside. You might notice some lag. We are racing a fair amount of Kiwis and Australians, and we're going to have a very big shadow realm entry here as we approach the big hairpin at the bottom of the hill. As we go in, you see the Mercedes here on the right hand side. It gets bumped from behind and presumably falls off the edge of the cliff to their inevitable death. And well, what is their loss is my gain. I move up into fourth. But what I was really interested to see is just how this track performs in race conditions. You know, is it easy to follow closely behind another car? Is it easy to overtake? Where are the best overtaking opportunities? That kind of thing. And so far, we've gained... No, we haven't gained. We've lost a position because I started third. Also, another thing to note, I suppose, is where is the penalty line? And it's onto this bridge here. So yes, we have lost the famous Big Blue Bridge that we had in previous versions of the game, of this track. Decided to cover the inside here. This hairpin presumably will be a good overtaking opportunity. They go quite deep. What I would say, the lighting is quite tricky with the tunnels on this track, as going into or out of a lot of these tunnels is really hard with the visibility. I pushed that guy into the sand realm and move up into third. So that is true of this tunnel here. Look at this, right? You go in, you cannot really see. It takes about a second or two for the light to adjust. And I suppose there is some sort of realistic element to that, but it is quite hard and it is quite tricky to see what you're doing sometimes. So that is one lap done. We've returned to third, albeit with a couple of Shadow Realm entries here and there. Up towards the first corner. I do like this first sector. This first sector flows very nicely, getting on the power as early as possible to get a good drive down this hill. And this is probably where the easiest spot is to get a penalty on this track. As you go through this right-hander, this curb on the left there is very easy just to drift slightly wide, get a penalty. And that corner is kind of on the limit of being flat out, and so if you get it slightly wrong, you are drifting wide. Now into this very twisty and technical middle sector. This is kind of awkward in a Group 3 car. Especially these two corners here, this right-hander, this long left, it seems to go on forever. And the American there having a very shocking exit. I'm going to move myself up into P2, albeit about 3 seconds behind M. Thomas there in the Ferrari, who's already bolted from the lead and managed to get a decent margin so far. So with 5.5 laps left to go to try to catch up, it's not impossible, but it will be hard to try to overhaul the lead. So this is what I was talking about with the penalties. Probably the best place, or worst, depends how you put it, to get a penalty. As you can see, they're just slightly too wide onto the curb, and boom, you've got yourself a half-second penalty into the hairpin there at the bottom of the track. A little later on, serving that penalty, and I was actually gaining on the leader, but that penalty put an end to that quite swiftly. Now I had the close attentions of the Ford Mustang behind. We can see if he can go for a move. I do like the chicane. It's definitely different than the original version of Grand Valley, but it's quite an interesting chicane, and you have to get a good exit because these corners here are flat out. This tunnel is quite tricky, as I've mentioned. You just have to kind of commit a little bit earlier than you think, and in a Group 3 car it's quite easily flat out once you have the confidence to turn in at the right moment. Now here, quite a long straight. You see the Mustang coming at me with the slipstream and superior straight line speed. We're going to keep him at bay, braking it a little bit too late, just on the 300 board and not quite turning into the corner as early as I probably should have done. Driving down the hill, still in second, 1.5 seconds off of the lead, and this is a good overtaking opportunity. As you can see, as we're about to see, the Mustang behind is going to go for it up the inside, albeit a tiny bit too late. And I think the nature of this hairpin allows for the old switcheroo to be performed, as we do to textbook perfection there. Eventually the Mustang served a penalty, and so it was just me and M. Thomas in the Ferrari in a battle for the lead. Now the Ferrari had a penalty here, and so I was able to gain maybe a second, but it wasn't quite enough to go for the lead, as I still had to have a good lap here. So let's have a good sector through this very tricky section, and again quite tricky to judge a braking point for this left-hander because of the lights coming out of that tunnel. Good exit here is crucial because you're flat out from here, and I noticed it just flashed up for half a second there that the Ferrari had a half-second penalty, and so I knew at this point if I could string together a good lap I would be able to challenge for the lead towards the end of lap 7. So we're coming up to the final lap, and I must say that after doing this race, onto the final lap now, I do really like the flow of this track. I know it is a different scenery, and I would say it is growing on me. The flow of the track is very nice. The middle sector can feel a little bit clunky in this kind of car, but this first sector is very nice, and I do like the final sector as well actually. So flying down the hill, trying to keep it to the left, braking on about the 400 board I found was a good marker going into this hairpin. Got to be patient. It's really easy to get on the power too early on the exit of that one, and then you've got this double left, which I think is really awkward. You kind of have to fire it in and then brake and really aim for that the grass on the inside, or the sand on the inside. There's no grass there, and you can see there through this sector you kind of just dip in two wheels into the sand on a fair amount of the corners just to really open up the track width, given that it is a very tricky and very tight section of track. So you can see now getting very close. This is going to be very, very close indeed. As we round out onto the bridge, he's about to serve this penalty. Let's see how close this gets. The gap was 1.1, and it's coming right down as we approach the big braking zone here into the hairpin. He's going to cover the inside, and through the hairpin we go. There's not many overtaking opportunities left, although it could be a drag race to the line because the Ferrari isn't too good in a straight line. And on the exit here, he's going to send himself into the sand realm and the penalty realm, and boom, with barely 2 corners left to go, we're going to take the lead of the race. And that is that. With that penalty being applied to the Ferrari, it's going to be a fantastic win. It was a really good race, and I must say that I really enjoyed that one. This one's going to be the Group 3 race for the FIA manufacturers season just coming up, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in that. But let's take a look at the other versions. So we have the South version, we also have the reverse versions, but I'll do those another time. So the South version, slightly different of course. Let's take a quick look. So this is the first corner, same first corner as the long track. And then as you come down the hill here, instead of turning to the left, you're going to go straight on into this very tricky little section here. It dips down to the left and you've got this fast sweeping right-hander. And if you're this Ford Mustang, you're going to float into the air with incredible alien technology. And that one, I've never quite seen that before. But I don't know if that's the line. I don't know if that's the line, guys, but it looks like if you want to be quick around here, you have to start floating around. The penalty line, as you can see, is a little bit different through this tunnel. And then instead of going left, we are instead going to turn to the right for this little twisty section to round out this lap. And then you've got this very long right-hander which loops into this final tunnel. It's quite an awkward section to get right. And again, the lighting is really difficult to judge going into that tunnel. So you can't quite judge the width of the track. It's quite awkward. But that is a lap of the circuit. Let's take a look at how it plays out in a race. This time Group 4, I feel like this version of the track is best suited to Group 4. Those guys involved in a crash within 0.1 seconds of the race starting. But we are away quite safely. We've got the Alfa on the inside. We're going to go clean around the outside here. I'm quite surprised they brake so early. And keep 4th place for now. So let's see how this section here plays out. It's quite a tricky corner, I'd say. This left-hander's okay. Then this right-hander, it doesn't, you know, you're not really being helped by camber too much. And then you've got that awkward bit of sand on the exit, which you really do have to be careful about. Not only to avoid a penalty, but also to not get your tyres too dirty with this twisty section here. So the race settles down as we enter the tunnel. And obviously, completely different type of tunnel, and the bridge completely different compared to Speedway. And again, I'd love to know your thoughts on whether or not you think this is a good or a bad change. Now, after reading lots of comments on the previous video I made, but also going on to the GT Planet forums, I think it's really mixed response. I think lots of people are very happy to see a new track, Grand Valley, returning in some form, but disappointed to see the change of the scenery. I must say that after doing these 2 races, I really quite like the track. I think it's fun. It's a good circuit. I would have preferred it to return in its original form, but I'm not complaining about this at all. I think this is a good track. I really do enjoy it, and I think I will have a lot of fun with this circuit. And might have to do another 200 lap race at some point around here. But coming through the downhill right-hander, this corner again, so tricky, but we are getting it fairly well done. But it's that corner there where you're going into there a lot quicker compared to the longer layout. So you do have to be quite careful going into that middle sector there. M. Thomas serves the penalty. I move up into P3. Later on in the race, this is what's going to happen. This is about as close as I've managed to get to the Mercedes in second. It was quite an even race, but then I went into the wall a little bit too hard there and got myself a penalty, moving down to 4th. So this kind of gave me an opportunity to try to lap on my own and work out some of these sectors. And I was getting this sector a lot better. It's quite an awkward set of corners, I would say. But I was getting a little bit better, a little bit quicker. This long right-hander to close out the lap I found really difficult to judge because of the tunnel and the lighting. But I was getting better and better as the race went on. And having to serve a penalty here, actually we're going to serve on lap 9. The leader actually served a penalty, and the race at the front got very, very close all of a sudden because the top 4, we were all kind of equally spread out. But as you can see, it became very, very close indeed on this final lap of 9. And coming through here, I'm going to have to serve this penalty, but it does kick off between the top 3 as we have the Mustang into the wall with a 1.5 second penalty. Thomas gets run wide. I'm going to have to serve this pen here. I'm going to lose that position once again and move back to 4th. And going to be a close one. All I'm going to have to really try and do is see if I can pick up any pieces from these top 3. but I will hopefully finish in front of the guy with the penalty, 1.5 second penalty, which will be rounded up to 2 seconds once they cross the line. So as long as I finish within 2 seconds, then I will be okay. And there were no more changes apart from finishing ahead of the guy with the penalty, and that would ultimately be a 3rd place. So yes, that is Grand Valley Highway 1. An interesting look at the 2 new circuits in the game. The long circuit I think is well suited to Group 3. The short version well suited to Group 4. Ultimately, I think it is a good addition to the game. It will be mixed in terms of the response. And yes, it is completely different. You know, Deep Forest Trail Mountain, High Speed Ring, largely unchanged, albeit with, you know, a couple of little changes here and there. But this one is completely different. So those wanting the original Speedway, unfortunately, you're not going to get that here. But I think it is a good track overall, and I did really enjoy it. But again, let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you next time. Goodbye.